Billy Budd, Chapter 7. The lieutenants and other commissioned gentlemen forming Captain Vere's staff, it is not necessary here to particularize, nor needs it to make mention of any of the warrant officers. But among the petty officers was one who, having much to do with the story, may as well be forthwith introduced. This portrait I essay, but shall never hit it. This was John Claggart, the master-at-arms. But that sea title may to landsmen seem somewhat equivocal. Originally, doubtless, that petty officer's function was the instruction of the men in the use of arms, sword, or cutlass. But very long ago, owing to the advance in gunnery, making hand-to-hand encounters less frequent, and giving to niter and sulfur the preeminence over steel, that function ceased. The master-at-arms of a great warship becoming a sort of chief of police, charged, among other matters, with the duty of preserving order on the populous lower gun decks. Claggart was a man of about 35, somewhat spare and tall, yet of no ill figure upon the whole. His hand was too small and shapely to have been accustomed to hard toil. The face was notable. The features, all except the chin, cleanly cut as those on a Greek medallion. Yet the chin, beardless as Tecumseh's, had something of the strange protuberant heaviness in its make that recalled the prints of the Reverend Dr. Titus Oates, the historical deponent with the clerical draw in the time of Charles II, and the fraud of the alleged popish plot. It served Claggart in his office that his eye could cast a tutoring glance. His brow was of the sort phrenologically associated with more than average intellect. Silken jet curls partly clustered over it, making a foil to the pallor below, a pallor tinged with a faint shade of amber akin to the hue of time-tinted marbles of old. This complexion, singularly contrasting with the red or deeply bronzed visages of the sailors, and in part the result of his official seclusion from the sunlight, though it was not exactly displeasing, nevertheless seemed to hint of something defective or abnormal in the constitution and blood. But his general aspect and manner were so suggestive of an education and career incongruous with his naval function, that when not actively engaged in it, he looked like a man of high quality, social and moral, who, for reasons of his own, was keeping incognito. Nothing was known of his former life. It might be that he was an Englishman, and yet there lurked a bit of accent in his speech, suggesting that possibly he was not such by birth, but through naturalization in early childhood. Among certain grizzled sea gossips of the gun decks and forecastle went a rumor perdu that the master-at-arms was a chevalier, who had volunteered into the King's Navy by way of compounding for some mysterious swindle whereof he had been arraigned at the King's Bench. The fact that nobody could substantiate this report was, of course, nothing against its secret currency. Such a rumor once started on the gun decks in reference to almost anyone below the rank of a commissioned officer would, during the period assigned to this narrative, have seemed not altogether wanting in credibility to the tarry old wiseacres of a man-of-war crew. And indeed, a man of Claggart's accomplishments, without prior nautical experience, entering the Navy at mature life as he did, and necessarily allotted at the start to the lowest grade in it, a man, too, who never made allusions to his previous life ashore. These were circumstances which, to the dearth of exact knowledge as to his true antecedents, opened to the invidious a vague field of unfavorable surmise. But the sailors' dog-watch gossip concerning him derived a vague plausibility from the fact that now, for some period, the British Navy could so little afford to be squeamish in the matter of keeping up the muster rolls, that not only were the press gangs notoriously abroad both afloat and ashore, but there was little or no secret about another matter, namely that the London police were at liberty to capture any able-bodied suspect and any questionable fellow at large, and summarily ship him to the dockyard or fleet. Furthermore, Even among voluntary enlistments, there were instances where the motive hereto partook neither of patriotic impulse nor yet of a random desire to experience a bit of sea life and martial adventure. Insolvent debtors of minor grade, together with the promiscuous lame ducks of morality, found in the Navy a convenient and secure refuge. Secure because once enlisted aboard a king's ship, they were as much in sanctuary as the transgressor of the Middle Ages harboring himself under the shadow of the altar. Such sanctioned irregularities, which for obvious reasons the government would hardly think to parade at the time, and which consequently, and as affecting the least influential class of mankind, have all but dropped into oblivion, lending color to something for the truth whereof I do not vouch, and hence have some scruple in stating. Something I remember having seen in print, though the book I cannot recall. But the same thing was personally communicated to me now more than 40 years ago by an old pensioner in a cocked hat, with whom I had a most interesting talk on the terrace at Greenwich, a Baltimore Negro, a Trafalgar man. It was to this effect. In the case of a warship short of hands, whose speedy sailing was imperative, the deficient quota, in lack of any other ways of making it good, would be eked out by drafts called direct from the jails. For reasons previously suggested, it would not perhaps be easy at the present day directly to prove or disprove the allegation. But allowed as a verity, how significant would it be of England's straits at the time, confronted by these wars which like a flight of harpies rose shrieking from the den and dust of the fallen Bastille? That era appears measurably clear to us who look back at it and but read of it. But to the grandfathers of us graybeards, the thoughtful of them, the genius of it presented an aspect like that of Camoens, spirit of the Cape, an eclipsing menace, mysterious and prodigious. Not America was exempt from apprehension. At the height of Napoleon's unexampled conquests, there were Americans who had fought at Bunker Hill, who looked forward to the possibility that the Atlantic might prove no barrier against the ultimate schemes of this pretentious upstart from the revolutionary chaos, who seemed in act of fulfilling judgment prefigured in the apocalypse. But the less credence was to be given to the gun deck talk touching Claggart, seeing that no man holding his office in a man of war can ever hope to be popular with the crew. Besides, in derogatory comments upon one against whom they have a grudge, or for any reason or no reason mislike, sailors are much like landsmen. They are apt to exaggerate or romance. About as much was really known to the indomitable stars of the master-at-arms career before entering the service as an astronomer knows about a comet's travels prior to its first observable appearance in the sky. The verdict of the sea quidnuncs has been cited only by way of showing what sort of moral impression the man made upon rude, uncultivated natures, whose conceptions of human wickedness were necessarily of the narrowest, limited to ideas of vulgar rascality, a thief among the swinging hammocks during a night watch, or the man-brokers and land sharks of the seaports. It was no gossip, however, but fact that though, as before hinted, Claggart upon his entrance into the Navy was, as a novice, assigned to the least honorable section of a man-of-war's crew. Embracing the drudges, he did not long remain there. The superior capacity he immediately evinced, his constitutional sobriety, ingratiating deference to superiors, together with a peculiar ferreting genius manifested on a singular occasion, all this capped by a certain austere patriotism, abruptly advanced him to the position of master-at-arms. Of this maritime chief of police, the ship's corporals, so called, were the immediate subordinates and compliant ones, and this is to be noted in some business departments ashore, almost to a degree inconsistent with entire moral volition. His place put various converging wires of underground influence under the chief's control, capable, when astutely worked through his understrappers, of operating to the mysterious discomfort, if nothing worse, of any of the sea criminality. And we'll pause here and we'll go on with Chapter 8 in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.